So the final one I want to talk about is Jim Morrison from The Doors. And it's funny because growing up I have friends that have very, very differing opinions on this guy. I mean, some people think he's this amazing poet and writer. Some people think he's like a very pretentious kind of overrated sort of guy. But I think if nothing else, he's interesting. And he infused a lot of sort of psychology into his songs and a lot of philosophy. And so he had a very, very big following among people. He just sort of fit with that 60s kind of mysterious kind of guru mold that had been going on at the time. But again, when you look back at his history, it's got a lot of these same themes. And his dad is a very high-ranking Navy pilot. And so when you think about what Jim Morrison has become, even without me going into it, you probably can think about how that might not be a great fit. You have this very sort of strict, rigid, authoritarian parenting style, and you have a kid that just utterly rejects it. And the thing about his dad was, because he was in the military, he was gone for a long time. So Jim had this sort of fun, more relaxed life with his mom most of the time. And then his dad would come home and the rules would change completely. So, and he moved around a lot. So, again, you see one of these events from early childhood where you just don't quite get the significance at the time. And this is something very famous, and I'll read you the quote. So they're moving again, the family for the fourth time in recent years, and he said, "Me and my mother and father and grandfather were driving through the desert at dawn, and a truckload of Indian workers had either hit another car or just, I don't know what happened, but there were Indians scattered all over the highways, bleeding to death. So the car pulls up and stops. This was the first time I tasted fear. I must have been like 4. Like a child is a flower, his head is floating in the breeze. The reaction I got thinking back there is the souls of those ghosts of those dead Indians. Maybe 1 or 2 of them were just running around freaking out and just leaped into my soul, and they're still there." Now, I'm sure part of that is part of the Jim Morrison mystique and legend, but it's still a hell of a traumatic thing for a kid to see, and that comes up in one of his songs as well. All that whole story is related, and something he talked about a lot. And so, although Jim's parents was kind of talking more about the discipline that went on in this house, they didn't spank their kids, but they were kind of ridiculed often, and so Jim develops this extreme sort of frustration and rage towards authority. And he gets the hell out of Florida, and he goes out west to California and starts studying UCLA, and starts taking acid and reading voraciously and studying the poems of William Blake and the philosophy of Nietzsche. And he meets Raymond Zarek and the rest of the guys, and it's kind of a good fit because they're all kind of into the same things. And so they hit it big, They start to play at the whiskey, and they start to develop this amazing following. And their story again is pretty meteoric. People are really digging the Doors all of a sudden. So again, you have this guy, and I think the narcissism paradigm fits better with him than some of the others because he had this very sort of arrogant presentation on stage. This very highly sexualized kind of guy that he presented himself to be. And again, he was a pretty shy guy on the inside. So again, it's a theme that we've seen over and over again in all these stories. But so the Doors are arrested he's arrested for obscenity in Florida for he's getting so overly sexualized on the stage and whipping his member out at times, and so, but he's also getting more and more into drugs at this point. And a part of him rationalizes his drug use as the doors of perception, which is William Blake's quote about this. But he also starts to think about it in terms of escaping to another world, break on through to the other side. And again, I have to use the word rationalization there because I think for any addict, sometimes we can talk ourselves into all the good things that drugs are doing for us, but when they become a crutch, and for Jim, he's gaining weight, he's becoming a pretty serious alcoholic, and now he's messing around with heroin, and so when he's found dead in Paris, in the Paris bathtub, it's not a big surprise. He's found by his wife Pam. He dies from a heart attack, and again, it's something now that the world has seen a few times, and so I think probably it was not as unexpected for Jim, but again, it's sort of this idea of what goes up must come down. You get this amazing admiration for a while, and the world shines its light on you for a while, but it doesn't last forever. And I think even a bad album or a bad review or something for people that have this level of sensitivity can have more of an effect than we think that it does. Like these are narcissistic injuries and wounds that happen when they have achieved some level of satisfaction, then someone rips the rug out. And Jim was a writer as well. Again, his poetry was something that people have made much of. He also had an alter ego that he called the Lizard King, where it was kind of a dissociative sort of idea that he was not this shy, quiet guy, but this wild, sexual extrovert. And again, we speak about cognitive dissonance. It's very difficult to have this tension inside a person's own head. If you think you're a scumbag and a loser, the world can think anything they want about you. But if you don't believe it, it doesn't mean anything. And that's something that I try to impress upon people. It's very, very difficult to think sometimes about these guys having hard lives when they have millions of dollars and everything handed to them. But until they're right with themselves, it's very superficial. So I think, again, this is something that it's a theme that we've seen over and over again. And I think you can also couch any of these sorts of all four of these in terms of one of the most powerful urges we have as people is to feel a sense of belonging. And if you think about it, all of them were very much sort of on the opposite spectrum of that. They were the lone, sort of wild, individualistic people that didn't belong anywhere. That's not to say they weren't revered and even worshipped, but in terms of where what their place was in the world, very hard to define, and I think it was very hard for them to define. None of them felt comfortable with their own families, and so that's the place where belonging really starts. And if we don't feel a sense of belonging in their own family, it's very difficult to feel a sense of belonging outside in the world. We always get this idea that we're kind of on the outside looking in. And so no matter what kind of families people accomplish, they felt like that. And so you can see is one of the common threads is this talent that came out of their inferiority. And all of this amazing creative energy that all of them exhibited had some roots in this childhood pain. And again, you see it a lot with comedians. But for them, it was just very, very powerful. And I think, to a sense, we all hopefully are able to channel the bad things that happen to us into something positive. And they did, but I think that, again, the inferiority that they experienced was so powerful that it was too difficult to cope with. So again, the very, very tragic deaths at the age of 27. And please do check out the book. It's a short read, and I'm not going to keep pumping it over and over and over again. But if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I think it's important. I think it's important for all of us. And again, a lot of people I talk to aren't big believers in psychology, and that's okay. There are a lot of things that I don't agree with. Our little Bible, the DSM, I think is mostly bullshit, I guess. But I do think that it's very important to get an understanding of where we came from, to figure out how it affects how we are with people in our current lives. And if you see people that have a very difficult time attaching to other people and other human beings, oftentimes you can find something from childhood that connects to that. And you certainly could in all four of these cases. So I had a good time writing this. It was very hard to hear these stories because they were so tragic, and these people would have gone on to do so much more. But I think a lot of their immortality came from their music. And again, all four of them still are very much in the public eye in many ways with their music, and it's stuff that we still hear all the time. And so they did achieve a certain amount of immortality with their music. But the price was too dear, I think. So that is the Forever 27 Club. And again, I think Luke will be back in the studio. It's good to have him around. I get kind of sick of hearing myself talk for almost an hour, but he'll be back next time around. We have a couple other other episodes in the hopper that'll be coming at you soon. We want to do something to do kind of on a Mother's Day theme, and some TV mothers and teen mothers. That's going to be interesting. And we just got some good things coming. So please do keep listening in. We really appreciate that. I've heard from some people over email and online, and it's very gratifying to hear. I really like this sort of podcasting kind of community that happens. I've been listening to a lot of others recently as well, and very much enjoying it. So please do continue to listen in, and we appreciate it very much, and we'll see you next time.